Hey everybody, welcome to Letter Appreciation Day. This is a special pop culture squadcast live. We're happy to have you here. We're going to be talking to a bunch of great letterers. Lettering is one of my favorite things about comic books. I am a huge nerd, as most people who know me know. I will talk about lettering for hours and hours, and it's one of my favorite things. And we've assembled an amazing cast of people. Um, September 1st is Gaspar Saladino's birthday, and several years ago, it was made to be the day that we celebrate lettering. Uh, Even though it's called Letter Appreciation Day, and we had this little discussion, but it is a day to celebrate lettering. It's a day to celebrate the craft, the artistry, the glue that holds comic books together. And I don't want to spend too much time talking to me because we have this great list of people. So I'm going to start bringing them in. We're gonna get everybody in, and then we're gonna start talking about a whole bunch of stuff. As soon as people stop calling me. All right, here we go. First person that's going to come in is a friend of mine, Taylor Esposito, the first and most important Taylor Esposito. So don't worry about your Google searches. Taylor's worked for just about everybody in comics industry. He's a Ringo Award-winning letterer. He also teaches the next generation of letterers at the Kubert School, and excuse me, and we're going to talk to him right about now.
Hey everyone.
Hey Taylor, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Oh, I am so happy to have you here. I'm glad. I know I invited you last year, and you weren't able to make it. I'm so glad you can make it this year. And how are things for you?
Can't complain. Gearing up to start the next Kubert School.
When does the school year start?
It starts on Tuesday or Wednesday. I forget exactly the day, but I start on next Thursday. So I was just wrapping up my syllabi and getting ready to torture. Teach these kids.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. All right. The next person I'm going to introduce is Justin Birch, who is also a Ringo Award nominated letterer. He's worked for He works for And World Design. He's worked for Black Box, Boom, DC, IDW, Mad Cave, SourcePoint, Vault, Z2, lots more. Very happy to have Justin Birch come in to the stream now. Hey, hi. Justin. Hi, Justin's daughter.
You want to say hi?
Hi.
It's the magic of live TV.
It's wonderful. This is as good as it's going to get. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm happy. I'm happy to be here. Happy to talk about comics lettering and as a lifelong Ranger fan, I hate your hat. So that's how it goes.
The only thing I have to say to that is 1994.
Yeah, it was let me tell you, one of the best days of my life.
Yeah, it was almost 29 years ago. Shush. Or was 29 years ago.
Shush. Do we need to? Okay, fine. Next person on the list. Everybody welcome in Micah Myers. Micah has worked for DC, Image, Dark Horse, IDW, Mad Cave, Webtoon, whatnot. More of that. Also nominated for a Ringo Award as Best Letterer. And keeper of a magnificent beard. Welcome in, Micah Myers. Hi, Micah.
Yes. Hi. How you doing?
How are you?
I'm good.
I'm so glad you could join us. I'm so glad you were able to be here tonight. You have been doing some amazing things lately. You've been super busy. I'm loving it. How are things going for you?
Oh, it's going good. Going, like I said, super busy. I work and occasionally sleep, and that's about my entire life. So it's about.
It's pretty much that's pretty much the MO for all comic book people, especially letterers. We're going to talk about a bunch of that stuff. Next on the list, I'm going to read this. This was my intro for this person last year, who is our returning guest on the show. We're going to do this every year, so everyone stays tuned and be aware that every year we're going to do a Letter Appreciation Day SquadCast right here. We're going to have as many people on as we can. But last year, Janice Chiang graced us, and she's an exquisite letterer. Her career began in the mid-'70s at Marvel. She's worked on titles like Squadron Supreme, Dazzler, Defenders, and more. She's also worked on DC Comics and did Star Slayer for First Comics, among others. She did extensive work for Milestone Comics and recently lettered, or not, she recently letters Superman Smashes the Klan. She's also working very much on Monkey Prince. And like that's just a couple of things. Like all of you have so many things in the hopper. Janice is a true professional whose craftsmanship is exceptional. Is one of the very few women in her profession. She has shown her perseverance and exceptional talent as a letterer. And now I get to add to that little piece that I said last year. She is now an Inkpot recipient, and we are very happy to have Janice Chiang join us.
Thank you so much for the introduction.
Well, you deserve it absolutely. How are you doing? It's been a few months since we saw you, since you've been on the show. You've now collected some hardware in the meantime, right?
I have it right here as proof.
You should, as you should.
There. That was really sweet. I was invited as a special guest in San Diego this year, and they gave me a choice of, spotlight panel. So it was either just speaking on my own or having guests. So I'm thinking, well, I started about 50 years ago, so I think I have enough stories, right? So I got on, and I prepared like a term paper. So I collected about 138 images that I paired to show my journey, about what
That's
I was.
fantastic. That's wonderful.
Yeah, I have to send you the Dropbox link.
I would love to see that. Absolutely.
I led it next, yeah, and then I went to community organizing for 5 years, and then came back to comics because my son was born.
I know. So we're gonna get into that, and we can get into it with our next guest too. But you guys have been doing this a long time, and still continue to perform at such a high level to this day, and I appreciate it. Our last guest who's joining us tonight is John Workman. He's one of the first people that I've interviewed in my world as in comics. He started his career on staff at DC Comics production department in the mid 70s. Subsequently became the art director for this new magazine called Heavy Metal. After a number of years there, he transitioned into full-time freelance lettering and has lettered some of your favorite comics from Marvel, DC, First, IDW, Dark Horse, Archie, and pretty much figure it out. You'll find it. I'm thrilled to have him here. Welcome, John Workman.
Hello.
Hi, John. How are you?
Rested and relaxed after a brief cross-country hop here. I got a good night's sleep last night.
Well, I'm glad you did. And I'm glad you were able to join us because that was one of our, we were back and forth on how that was going to work out. And I'm glad you were able to be here. One of the things that I want to kind of get to, and I wanted to touch on early is, I was thinking about I have a comic that both you and Janice lettered in. And I think it's Star Slayer 7. So Janice did the main story, and the backup is the first appearance of Grimjack, which John, you lettered.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been this ongoing thing that we've had over the years. And it's just amazing how the two of you, and just so you know, that was 30 years ago. 40 years. I'm sorry. That is 40 years ago because it's the 40th anniversary of First Comics this year.
Whoa, that dates us, John.
Oh, yeah.
I'm just saying.
I don't want to say what I was doing 40 years ago.
You're a baby.
Exactly.
He's learning.
I remember back in the 60s when I first discovered fanzines. Actually, a friend of mine turned me on to them. And I couldn't believe in reading interviews with writers and artists that they did not remember these incredible things that they've done. I thought, wow, they why can't they remember this beautiful stuff? And now I have dim memories of 40 years ago and working on Grimjack.
Well, let me tell you. Yeah, I that's fine. There was a discussion in the comic world about who had created the logo for Grimjack, and I want to get to logos during this conversation. But I think Todd Klein had posed the question, and I've asked both of you. Neither of you have agreed to it. I've asked a bunch of people. Mike Gold thinks John did it. He's wrong. And so we have come to the conclusion that it must have been Timothy, but we haven't been able to confirm that.
I think it probably was. I know.
Well, that's what Joe thinks. So that's what Joe Staten thinks.
Yeah, I think
He
so.
was an art director, so he would know, right?
Yeah.
Well, he didn't know particularly, but he seems to think that way because he didn't know for sure, but he says it probably would have been in that case. So I want to kind of go around the room to kind of start us off, and I have a bunch of questions here, and please feel free to jump in at any time with you guys. But I want to kind of go and kind of say, what drew you to comics and lettering in particular? Like, what was it, the things that brought you to there? If you want to, Taylor, would you start with us?
Sure, but mine is the worst answer of all.
That's okay. That's all right. Everybody has.
I accidentally got into it. I never
Good.
meant to. Well, let me backtrack a little bit. So I was a graphic designer in college. I had an interest in typography, but after college, just kind of looking for work. And then it was, I had a friend call me, "Hey, do you want to come in for 2 days of work at Marvel just to help out with some stuff?" Well, yeah, sure. Why not? I'm not working. 2 days turned into a week turned into a month turned into 5 years, and I was assistant production manager. I was like, I wasn't really meant to be here, but okay. And then when I got laid off, I, kind of forced myself to learn lettering and, just kind of worked my way in there. But, I always liked comics, but it was that thing of like, how am I ever going to get in there? I'm not talented enough to draw, and I never really considered lettering as a thing. When you're 10 years old, you don't know, even though you see it all the time. So it never really occurred to me. And then it's like, I like this. And I mean, granted, it's easier when it's digital compared to pen and ink. And, take that for what it is. It's still pretty hard, especially when you're working all-nighters and trying to figure out where things are going to fit. But, had a lot of fun with it. And I'm still having a lot of fun 10 plus years later.
I have a question on that. I'm going to kind of jump off of that. Do you teach people to letter traditionally?
I don't, because especially in the last few years, lettering was a 1-year course. And my biggest goal was to get them ready to work. Like, they left my class and they'd be ready to start working. So there just wasn't enough time for it. Now that we're expanding the program to 3 years for lettering, it's my goal to get that in there. I don't know how we're going to do it right now, but that is part of it. But I mean, it's going to be more just for them to know, because hardly anyone hires, traditional lettering anymore, unfortunately. It's a shame because it's beautiful, but, time is money.
So for our more veteran people, like, what would you guys say are the pros and cons? What are the pros for hand lettering versus digital lettering?
Well, when we hand lettered, we worked directly on the art. So I feel there's more sensitivity in the placement of lettering elements, the balloons, the sound effects, the scale. Because what I learned in Neil Adams' studio with Larry Hama and Ralph Reese was you have to read the visual storytelling. So when it transitioned into digital lettering, it was like, it's still haphazard the way I feel. People are just like slamming it on. When Carlos Manguel at DC taught me how to do the DC lettering way, all of a sudden there's a sandwich. I said, what the hey? People don't know how to draw a pointer? It's like, I didn't understand. I feel there's less engagement because of the digital thing. And people just buy fonts. They don't make fonts. I have my own fonts I use for Storm King Comics. I have like 10 years going, 11 years body of work. Just my hand lettering translated to digital fonts. Because why I letter is more as an artist. Because, when I do sound effects, I go in the distort window. I distort, I outline, distort every letter. And I work it in as if I'm hand lettering. So that's what I see the difference. And I guess if you don't come from hand lettering skills, it looks good. It's floating, sort of pointing somebody. It's like even the pointers are haphazard. Because the way I see an ellipse, it's like a clock, right? So I tell people when characters are, empathizing and sympathetic to each other, the pointer should be neutral, coming under like an open hand. But when you're angry, it should be like, a dagger coming down like at 10 o'clock or 2 o'clock. It's like the force is there. So, there's so much subtlety that you can do digitally, but people have been trained to bang it out. So I don't know. I'll do what I need to do, and I might be the last person standing. So, I'm hedging on the young people to see my work and be able to understand the difference, and to strive to like, well, let's try a 360 approach, in the main houses. Okay, I said enough.
Well, John, what's your opinion on that?
I guess I'm
I
kind
mean,
of.
but once you talk about how you work today, like how have you transitioned in that? Like,
I still hand letter,
mhm.
just not everything, but most things. I just do it directly into the computer, and I have a lot of fun with it. The Ronin 2 book that I'm doing right now is just what a pleasure it is to work on. Almost all of the artwork in it is made of double page spreads, sometimes a single image. So I thought the lettering is going to have to stand up to that. It's going to have to really work. And I also was greatly influenced relatively recently, when I read every Milton Caniff Terry and the Pirates from the beginning of 34 up to 1946, and the lettering as it progressed was amazing. When somebody yelled, you knew they were yelling. And I've tried to incorporate that and what I've been doing these days. I did that with oh my gosh, what's the name of the book here? You're gonna have to forgive me. I'm forgetting names and things like that a lot lately. It'll pop into
No
my
worries, no worries.
But I have to be deliberately messy at times with the hand lettering into the computer, so it doesn't have this too refined look to it.
I think you're going for the word organic.
Yeah.
That's what I feel. Hand lettering on the board itself lend itself to organic nature, because you had to feel the ink. It's like it's like humid days. It's like, oh my god, we got to put the air conditioning on because paper's going to soak up all the humidity, and then it's going to like bite, with the point and pull the paper. Or God forbid somebody ate potato chips and you get the pages like, what it might be? It's like a big blot. So it's like
that.
Yeah, so it makes you humble. It's like,
Well, Walt Simonson is the pretty much the last guy who insists on having hand lettering right on the artwork when he can. So the Ragnarok stuff that I've been doing for the past few years, that's all right on the boards. But even there, I play around with the sound effects and with the sort of specialty lettering when someone's really yelling. I scan it in and play with it, or I create it right on the right in the computer and play with it, and it's fun. My big fun in doing lettering nowadays, anyway, is taking what I've lettered when I been getting the scans of the inked art and placing them, and I love that. And I like to put things behind background elements or behind the people, or bring it out in front of the whole thing. So much fun. It has this, as you said, the sort of the look that it's been just dumped on top. Mm-hmm. And so I try to give it some depth and not really a 3D effect, but to let you know that this is here, and then there's something behind it, and then maybe some lettering back there, and it's a lot of fun.
When I place lettering, if someone's within a doorway or room, I pull it in if there's a door frame.
Mm-hmm.
I make sure it's like it's on the interior. So you speak as a master, and all our fellow colleagues here, they're masters too. because you love what you're doing and you're engaged. And you're, with me, it's like I let it to the very last second until final files. I'm still like fidgeting. Sometimes it feels like solitaire, but I want to entertain myself too, as well as the reader. So I think that's why we're all here, because we always find something new. Because when people say, "Well, what's your favorite book?" It's like the one I'm working on. Because I just like clean my brain. I have no preconception. It's like I have to engage myself, or I won't be honest. Okay, I'll shut up.
And speaking to this thing of like, dumping it on the page versus the foreground, midground, I try to explain that to the students because, they come in first years, they're still learning like layouts and everything. And I'm like, listen, you can't just do this. Like if Superman is punching through the wall in the foreground, this can't be behind it, because X, Y, Z. And they look at me like I'm talking to in foreign tongues. I'm like, think about like it exists, but it doesn't exist at the same time. Once you get that, it makes sense. And they're like, what does that mean? I'm like, forget it, I've lost you. I'm just gonna do it myself.
Or I hate it when people not from the industry but in publication, the pointer has to always go to the mouth. It's like that's not always possible.
Sure.
Look, sometimes they're gonna speak out of their armpit, and that's just the way it's gonna be.
Or the artist like flips the art direction, it's gonna be shooting through their head or something. Mike is something.
No, I want to bring Justin in. So, how did you decide that you or fall into doing this?
So I had a regular 9-to-5 office job that I just absolutely hated, and that's all it was. It was a job. Like I never considered it a career. So after enough consecutive bad days at work, I came home and asked my wife, like, what do we do? This isn't for me. And she said, what makes you happy? And I instantly said comics. And from there, I broke down every aspect of the comic making process and said, what would I be the best at and what would I enjoy the most? And my favorite classes in college, because my bachelor's is in graphic design, were the typography classes. So once I made that connection, it was sort of off and running.
That's awesome. That's great. I want to kind of talk about something that we kind of brought up, and this is we're going to open for everybody. I'm going to add this to the stream and see how this works out. So this is something you've done, and
a couple years ago.
Yeah, but like, how do you guys? And I'm going to take it out just so we can hear each other. But and anybody jump in however you want to. But when you're presented with a script and art that has a lot of words and not a lot of space, how do you juggle, putting something like this in? I mean, you did a great job. You were able to save the art where it needed to be, but there's a lot of words, right? And how does that work? What are the choices that you make there?
Well, first off, looking at that, I already see stuff that I don't like.
It's on your page, okay? So that's
right. I know
that will never change. That will never
right.
change.
Like,
we don't look at our published work. It's like, damn, this opportunity is.
Be aware. I have all of your stuff. Everybody will get.
Yes.
Will get a chance.
I'm the one who goes first, and then get it all. I'm the icebreaker. That's what.
Oh, he's gonna show me one.
Early on, my whole goal was just not to cover art, which is not always the best method to go by.
It's part of the craft. Like that's one of the things that to the untrained eye, not being able to, you have to put these words on this page, and not obscure the art. Like the art is supposed to tell the story, but the words assist it, and there's this delicate balance that needs to be played, and it's very hard. Like it's got to be one of the most difficult things about being a letterer in terms of the crafting of it.
Sure. Yes.
unless Walter just gives you like a couple of stick figures and says go for it, right?
Well, edited script would help. Like, right?
This is very true.
In my all these years and years, I've only run into one thing where I was lost. I thought, where the heck am I going to put these words? And it was something that Mike Grell was doing. He was writing it and drawing it. And I managed to get the thing in, but I wasn't happy with it. And when Mike and the editor saw it, Mike rewrote the dialogue. So it
You
simplified.
had to letter it then, right?
Yeah, I had to reletter that part. But it
Got
was
paid twice.
so it worked out without any trouble. But the Frank Miller stuff right now on Ronin 2, as I said, I'm just having a ball on that. It's great. But there have been some pages where I really have to think, and I'll lay the stuff in roughly, and then I'll forget I'm me, and I'm a reader, suddenly just reading this thing, and are my eyes going where they're supposed to go, to the next balloon? And so I have to connect them sometimes in ways that make you go down these and then go up to these and over here and down here. But it's so much fun figuring all that stuff out. And that, as I said, that's where my enjoyment comes from lettering these days, not the actual lettering itself necessarily.
Have you guys ever lettered manga translation where you go backwards?
I don't want to do that anymore. I don't want to do it again.
Mike, I want you to jump in here. What is first of all, what's your experience with, how do you handle a situation where you've got too many words and too many pictures and they're not going to all fit on the same page?
I cry a little bit, and then I guess I figure it out. They were explaining, like, it's a lot of times lettering feels like you're solving a puzzle. Like, you gotta figure out where everything's gonna go. Not only where it's gonna go, but also where it's gonna go, where it serves the story to lead the eye around the page. So it's like a really complicated puzzle that you have to figure out, and and it can be definitely challenging sometimes, and hopefully if you get better writers and better starting out, when I was starting out, you kind of work for less experienced people and everything, and it's as you get better and better, you can hopefully find better collaborators, but sometimes you don't. I mean, sometimes people that are billed as better creators are they still haven't figured out this whole space thing. Like, there's art and there's all these words, and how do they look at the page and see that that's going to work? But they just trust it for us to figure it out, I guess.
Yeah, I totally get it. Listen, you've worked. I've been watching your career for years now, and you work so hard to get to the point where as we said, are super busy, and I love it. That's a factor, like, especially for someone like you who's come up trying to make it today in today's world from the indie side up. You find that as you work for bigger companies on more important books, you find that the collaboration gets easier as a letterer,
so.
from a lettering perspective, right? Like, what I'm saying, like, it's not, and I want to say that, like, it's often, and it's the case, and part of why we're doing this today, part of why we need to celebrate lettering is it is a difficult job. It is a thing where most people, or a significant portion of people, even in the industry, don't appreciate the job of the letterer.
Yeah, I think so. I think, as I've started to do things for, actual, publishers and bigger publishers, and you would think that the artists and all that, but would also have, learned things along the way. But there's sometimes when you're working on a book with a publisher and the artist still hasn't figured out that all the pages need to be the same size. Stuff like that. I mean, like, you got this far, you're like, get Image Comics or something, and you haven't figured out that there's that all the pages need to be the same size, much less the size of the dimensions, but just the same size of each other. and running it.
That's a problem for lettering.
it's-
Like what? No, what? No, let's take a second. So why is that a problem for lettering? Let people who are listening.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, for a lot of times you letter, on the actual page, and then you hand in like just the layers. And if everything's not the same size, and if they're not all working off the same size, then the lettering is going to be where you put the lettering is not going to be where they have the lettering. That would be a problem. But just in general if you handing in, you want to hand in the same thing. You want to hand in a cohesive kind of thing. I can't talk. I'm sorry.
You're doing great. You're doing great.
Something
No,
like
it's
that
great.
happened to me years ago when I was working on Elric with Walt, and it was right on the artwork.
Was that for first? Was that in the first
That
stuff?
was for DC.
Oh, okay.
Moorcock.
I don't remember they had these. They had them, but go ahead.
Oh, it was pretty neat stuff. But Walt decided to go back to the old 12 by 18 art size that had been part of comics since about 1952. It used to be 13 by 18. Then they changed it to 12 by 18 in 1952 or thereabouts, and kept that up until 1967 when they went to 10 by 15. But the first few issues of it, he did it at 12 by 18. And then I think he decided for time's sake, he would go to 10 by 15. Although this was I won't get too technical with this, but my
We're here
mind,
for the geeky technical. Don't worry about it.
well, I did not catch on to the idea that he had changed sizes. So I lettered it the same size that I did for the larger stuff. So boom, here's this big letter in the last issue, I think it was. You really notice it if you look at the compilation version of the book, the trade paperback. What caused me to do that, I do not know. I should have known better, but and no one else seemed to notice either until the book was printed.
Hey, you made the deadline, right? So.
Oh, yeah. And about words. I've written a few Archie things, and I have tried to keep the number of words per page under 100. So I was actually counting up the words as I was writing it. And I remember I was working on a book years ago for Vertigo and having fun with it, actually. But there were an average of 500 words per page.
Wow.
In this comic.
Did Grant write that or Alan? Which one?
I did something stealing probably from Gaspar or whoever lettered Justice League back in the 60s. And I hadn't noticed this at the time, but at least some of those Justice League books, I mean, they were a bit wordy too, but they're all in italic. And when they needed to go to a bold, it wasn't a bold italic, it was a bold Roman. And I think the narrative balloons were all in Roman instead of being in italic. But you can, or I at least could letter faster in italic than I could in the regular, Roman way. So I lettered these 500 word pages, all in italic. And again, it was kind of fun. I enjoyed it. I only did like 5 issues of the book, I think. Maybe somebody didn't like what I was doing, but it was a challenge to get all 500 of those words in there without squeezing out the artwork. And the italic version really helped a lot.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Let's change topics just a little bit, and I want to talk about this, and I'm sure everybody can punch in, and we're gonna talk about Taylor. So how much of your time is taken up by sound effects? Like how much goes into that? How much of a difference in the way you approach it? Like, for example, I mean, like this is not showing up very well, but like, there's regular lettering on this page, but then there had to be time to spend doing sound effects. And, I'm going to give you another example of that, or give the viewers another example of that.
I didn't know we were going to be critiqued today.
No, it's not. It's not critiquing. It's just I just want to show. I'm giving examples to the world. Like so. And this is Micah's page. There's a lot of sound effects on this page as well about. And you have to decide what you're going to do, what colors you're going to do, how much. It's much different than just laying down letters inside of a balloon. How much of your time, does that take? And am I wrong about that? I would think that it'd be something where number one, you feel like you have a chance to be creative, and number two, you really want to get it right. Like, how does that work? This is free form question for everyone.
Let me start with a couple caveats. First of all, that's an older page, and I'm so embarrassed by it at this point.
First of all, I looked at it. And said, he loves John Workman, doesn't he?
I have a quick follow-up question. Did you only have inks for that page?
I always only have inks for.
Okay.
The other thing I was going to say is I am terrible with color. So I actually do everything in like red, yellow, and black, or white sometimes. And I will ask my editors for whatever colors they want because I can't do it. So.
Well, the color picker is your best friend.
Well, the problem for me is I might have some slight color blindness because I can't tell the difference, which is why I do that. But it also helps me move a little faster. But now to answer your question, balloons for the most part, I'm autopilot. Like I can just see the page and just, okay, this is what I'm going to do. So I do that first. I get all my balloons down first. And then that kind of frees me up to kind of figure out how sound effects are going to play around the rest of the page and around the balloons that need to exist there. But it depends. Like, sometimes you're inspired. Like, when I'm working on Elvira, it's great. It's so silly and over the top and campy that the sound effects just come to me. And then I'm working on, some other stuff and I'm like really struggling because I'm like, in that case, in that book, for example, Gary had already lettered some sound effects himself by hand. So I was doing my best to mimic him, and I'm like, I'm not as good as he is with a pen doing this. So I'm like, I hope this looks good enough, which is always the handicap of when your artist is also doing their own sound effects. You kind of want to keep as consistent as possible. And obviously I was much greener back then, so that's not even the best example of what I could have done.
No, and please, I'm messing with people with the stuff we're putting out here because you guys are all fantastic. So don't and that's one of the things that it's another question we'll get to later. I want to talk more about the sound effects. Justin, Micah, what do you guys think? How much time does it take?
Honestly, it just depends on. It just depends, right? Like it depends on if the sound effect is supposed to be the main focal point of the page, or if it's just a small little, I can't think of a small onomatopoeia sound. Click.
There's a great example, and I'll give you. It was in a book, and Troy Patiri lettered it. And it was a tick, 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 where someone was running, and it gave and giving you the sound, like there was a sound effect of that person's feet hitting the ground as they were running, and it really made a big difference to me in that particular. Like so that's a small thing. It doesn't have to be the main thing.
Yeah, I tend to take more time on the bigger stuff, because I think that's if it's the main focal point for me, at least on the page, that's what I'm going to focus on, spend the most time on, especially if you're adding clipping masks to it or anything like that.
There's a famous thing that most of us probably have seared in our memory, but the image of Beta Ray Bill slamming Mjolnir to the ground with the crack of doom. And like what went into that, John? Like when you approached that page and you had to say, I need to put these letters on this page that is gonna be a big part of that. Like I said, that image, you can ask, go to any con, you ask 15 people, 13 of them know exactly what that image looks like.
Well, Walt Simonson is a darn good letterer himself, and
True.
in his earlier days at DC, I think he lettered some stuff for Howie Chaykin, and and he did a lot of maybe all of the sound effects and titles on Manhunter. So he really knows what he's doing, and he described pretty well what he had in mind for that doom and all, so I just took off from what Walt had described. Before that, I'd done on Marshall Rogers on Detective. Marshall actually penciled in most of those sound effects himself, so I was just virtually inking what he had in mind.
Okay.
Other things, though, titles and such, I did advertising work before I got into comics, so I did a lot of logos and things like that, and they were kind of fun. And it does take longer to do them by hand. I love working on the computer when it comes to logos and story titles. It enables you to maybe do 2 or 3 and pick one that you like best. And that takes less time than doing one on paper, or at least it does for me. And I guess if my enjoyment lately is in placing balloons, my only a little bit down from that is the enjoyment I get out of doing sound effects or story titles.
I want to. You brought up something that's kind of important that I want to talk about, and it's not as much today. I don't know, but I want to know, like in terms of logos, how much time do you guys are able to do logos? And we're going to talk about a particular logo in about a second, but like, it means a lot. The concept of a comic book logo is important. There are certain things. There are people who will fight you to this day about Superman's logo, and I experienced that. I was having a lunch with a amazingly talented creator, and all of a sudden the conversation came to Superman's logo, and he was furious that it's not the original logo. And but anyway, there's another one that's important, and considering that it is Gaspar's birthday, I want to talk about this logo, and I know John. I mean, for the John and I have had this conversation, so I would love for you to describe your feelings about this logo.
I think it's one of the greatest logos ever done. It tells you what you need to know about the character and what you're getting into and reading it. It's beautiful and just so well done. And I am so ashamed that an awful, absolutely dreadful logo that there we go. It looks like a 1950s science fiction comic or something.
Okay, I'll take it out. I'll take it out.
It hurts to look at it. Luckily, after I did that wretched one, I did a variation on Gaspar's original, and that kind of made me feel better.
I may have, hang on.
Not to speak ill of anyone, but Joe Orlando did the rough for that, and I just followed what he had in mind. I hoped when he saw it, he would throw it in the garbage.
Was this yours? Oh
no, that was well after my time there.
No, I know there was a bunch of. It's funny because for me, the Gaspar's original Swamp Thing logo always works all the time, and anybody who tries to change it doesn't get it. But there's been a bunch of them that over the years, because I went through, prior to this and looked through like all of them that changed a bunch of times. But the original was the first 22 issues of Volume 1, and but you've told me that story that someone said they want you to change it, and you're like, here, you won't. What you gave them, you didn't expect them to actually use.
I hoped they wouldn't. It was so wretched compared to the original. It said nothing about the character, and it was inept. I thought. I disliked that logo greatly. There were other things. They gave me the action logo, I think in 1975 or 76 to
Really?
and I thought, oh, I'm going to wreck the action logo now. And when I came up with this, all right, but the original was so much better. And I don't know that there was this feeling of sales were going down. I think detective sales were around 126,000 at the time, which was way down, from what it had been. And one of the ideas was when the sales start to slump, jazz up the look of the book. And well, this wasn't too bad. Carmine had me redo the detective logo, but as it was in 1964 when he took over the art every other month on the Batman story in it, and rather than that slight italic version, he wanted a straight up and down one. And what I did was all right. It didn't denigrate, the original or the one that was done in '64 too badly. But other ones that they had me do, I thought were not as bad as Swamp Thing, but still pretty lousy.
Well, okay. Janice and Taylor and Mike, like, how much do you guys get the opportunity to create logos for books, especially newer books, right? How much, what is your how do you approach that?
I'll go first because I'm never asked to do logos. When I was at Marvel, all the guys got to do the logos because it was little work for a lot of money. So the only logos I've
That's
done.
not fair.
Well, I found out also from a summer intern that I got fan mail they threw away.
Oh, no.
He switched and actually gave me a letter. The rest, he said, yeah, you get a lot. So that's interesting. This is the first one I've ever seen. So I got special treatment that way. But I have two logos. Blade, the first one, Blade, is mine. And then Bernie had sketched out a Captain Stern for a series at Tundra. So I finalized that. So those are my two big logos. Taylor, you go.
So I don't do much logos. I get asked once in a while, but typically what happens with me, and this is something that, John, tell me if you agree, the publishing, the advertising world, you'll get asked for a lot of stuff constantly with revisions, and then the worst possible choice will always get picked. So between that and just the general, I don't really have, anytime I'm doing a logo, it's taking away from lettering, which is my real passion. So I don't really like doing it. But I've had a couple that have gotten used, and, it's nice. I don't think anything, I can't even remember right now, but I don't think anything that notable. But I will say, as a quick aside, so on Elvira, we've been doing all these stories, and every single one of them is a riff on a popular movie or whatever. So I get to stretch those muscles in that David will give me a book, an issue, and it'll be like, so one of them we did, Elvira goes into the world of The Shining. And the issue was called
David Avalone, right?
David Avalone, yes. And the issue was called She's a Kubrick House. So I mocked up a version of that title in the same font that the Shining poster used. Mm-hmm. Or what was another one I did? So we did one, it hasn't come out yet, but the final issue of Elvira versus the Monsters, it's her basically against every single movie monster, Dracula, Frankenstein, Godzilla, all this stuff. So what are all these monsters but a monster squad? So I did the title to reflect the movie Monster Squad, and I love it. It's amazing. So that kind of stuff is fun. But obviously, it's just, riffing off of stuff that already exists and trying to make it look as close as I can. But it scratches that itch, so I'll say that much about it.
Put an Easter egg and a wink to the audience. And
I love doing that, yeah.
No, it looks so happy.
So, Micah, with you working on new books, like a lot of individual stuff, right? Do you get asked to do the logos? Is that
Yeah, I've done a couple logos for books that a lot of like indie stuff that are just like Kickstarter. But there was a couple books for Scout that I did a logo for Grit, and what's the new one? It's coming out now. Uh, gosh, Death Comes for the Toy Maker. I think that's what it's called.
right?
But I made those logos. A lot of times when it comes to make a logo, like everyone else has already said, like it's a lot of work and there's a lot of revisions and just a lot of it's almost like it becomes a pain kind of because it's just you get it done and you're like, all right, I'm happy with this, and then they come back with more revisions and you fix it, you make it look better for them, and then like, oh, actually let's actually change this, and let's just it becomes a big time suck kind of. So I've tried to start avoiding it, like unless like I kind of lay out like I can make you a simple logo, so we can go like one or two round revisions, and this is how much it'll be. If that doesn't sound good for you, then that's fine. Somebody else can do it. I'll still letter the book, But yeah, I've kind of tried to avoid it a little bit now because it just becomes a big time tax on your time of when you could be lettering some other project or something. And also I learned that I was not charging nowhere near what you should be charging for logos. So like hundreds of dollars less than I should have been charging. So yeah, that's another.
You need to fix that.
Stop doing it. Yeah. So yeah, I do rather stick to lettering than logos and all. So
Don't worry, we've all had these painful lessons.
yeah.
So, Justin, thanks for coming back. And did you do all of the Rich Duick, Alex Cormack lettering for all those books? Have you been doing all? I know you did Road to Bones.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Road to Bones, CSRO's Breath of Shadows.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you do the logos for those books as well?
No, I avoid logos like the plague.
Okay. I want to kind of bring this in. I want to show, one of the things, kind of a theme that we've been talking about is like the thing that you don't want is the thing that gets picked. And we had on the SquadCast earlier this week, we had Jack Harris on, and we talked about this, right? And so there's two things I want to talk about this. One is that I miss words on covers, like this stuff like this. I mean, Jack is known for he felt he puts too much on the covers, but the interesting story that was passed along is that Firestorm, the book was coming, like they knew that they were doing it, but Alan hadn't figured out what the costume was actually going to look like, and it was getting to the point where they needed some art to do for the house ad to say, hey, this is coming, and finally they were pushing for it, and Al presented a couple of options, and this was one of them. And Jack said, are you sure you're going to want to draw this all the time? This is a pretty annoying, complicated thing. And he's like, no, I'll be fine with it. And Jack's like, oh, well, they're probably not going to pick this one anyway. And they did. So there you go. So Al was stuck with this, and everyone since has had to draw 3 lines across and starburst, and until was it Tom Mandrake said, with John Ostrander, was like, no, screw that, we're not doing this anymore.
I did that logo on.
You did that logo? See, there you go. See, when you were on staff, right?
Yeah, I didn't do the subhead. I can't remember. Maybe Gaspar, or Todd, or somebody. Bill Morse. It's hard to tell, but my understanding was this just something that they might use for an ad, not the real thing. They weren't going to put that on the real book, and it's awful.
I have the ad.
Hey, good job.
I'll get you the ad.
John's awful's mind. This is amazing.
Oh, look at the R's on it. I would have brought the cinder, down and played with it a little bit.
Hang on 1 second. I'm going to get that for you.
This is hindsight, John. It's fine.
Well, they did that several times. Things that I did just maybe for an ad to give a rough idea of the book. What was it? Doorway to Nightmare. that was a toss away thing, and then they used it on the doggone book.
Oh, really?
I don't know.
We have to have coffee one day, John.
Here's this is the house ad that we're all here. So there you go. That's what you probably
Yeah.
first did it for, right?
I think
This is the first house ad for Firestorm that like and I start. So Mike was responsible for the ads at the time. Mike Gold was when he was at DC, and he was begging Al, like, I need art. I need to put something in here. And that's when they decided that this was the design for Firestorm. It's slightly different from what ended up on the cover and how it goes, but not that much. But yeah, so this is the logo that you came up for the ad, and it ended up on the book, right?
Yeah, I did all the.
That's awesome.
Above the logo too. Someone else might have done the bit down toward the bottom, but I can recognize my own S's on that. I was making kind of distinctive S's at the time. Lots of times now I look back and I don't know whether I did something or not, especially from the very early days at DC. My balloons were awful, and the tails were way, way, way too thick. I learned quickly to trim them down a bit.
I want to kind of open this one up to everybody. And this is, what do you experience that readers and fans do not know about the life and livelihood of a letterer?
Every day is Labor Day. And then when it comes around, we laugh because we're going to be working on it.
That we exist.
Times, I think all of you are aware of this, but we've had to make up time.
Yes.
Other people have eaten up, and my gosh, that so many times things have been down to the wire, and having to. I'm very happy with computers now. We don't have to worry about Federal Express, and that gives us another day to work on things. That was never fun.
I sometimes like to joke that it feels like we're the only ones with deadlines.
No, we're the only ones who have to meet deadlines. That's what it is.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
Wait, when I get a deadline, I always try to come in early. And in terms of workload, I don't take more than I can handle. Somebody else needs to work. Why should I hog it? I remember one time I got a call from Marvel, the Virginia Renita, which had this schedule book go up and down to the editors and tell them what was due. So I got a call. It was like, hurry up, get this in by Friday. And then I found out, I said, sure, no problem. And everybody was like, oh, we were betting he would lose his job if it didn't come in on Friday. It was like, I'm going to miss my deadline. So, that was cool. I was thinking about it. The number one factor in success is trust. If somebody trusts you with a deadline or to be on a team, it's like, my view is like, you can exert leadership from whatever position you are in the credit line. It's like, the only ones who can't have a creative crisis are letterers, right? But everybody else, this kills me. Somebody gets a deadline, go on to social media, show that they're on vacation. And I'm saying, WTF, why did you do the job? The rest of us are going to be late. Michael was talking about templates, like files not fitting in so that your lettering is like all over the place. Well, I got like thumbnails 25% of the template. What kind of shit is that? I mean, it's like I've seen everything. And then I've gotten really good where I get black and white and I have to do color fills. It's like, bam, I got the color file. It's like, yeah, I guessed well. But yeah, that's a little, quite a few of my pet peeves. Everyone else can elaborate. Good. Sorry about the S word.
It's all right. Don't worry about it.
I'll say, yeah, like there's so many times you get an email and they're like, hey, the artist was really dragging on this, or the colorist. Can we get this, can we get this in a couple of days, or can, hey, it's Friday. Like, I got to show this to somebody on Monday. Can you get it done over the weekend? I mean, like, if you got to show it to somebody on Monday, you're not really giving me much of a choice. I mean, there's a choice of me just saying no, but but then
Well, I mean, you are
I
working
don't.
while we're doing this.
Yeah,
I noticed that too.
yeah. I
Good. I didn't do that.
I do. Yeah.
What power do you
But yeah,
have?
yeah. I mean, there's so much times with people just like, hey, like everyone else was saying, no one else has a deadline but us. Like, everyone else messed up, and now, it's got to go to the printer in, 3 days, and you got to get it done now. Like all we were doing was sitting around waiting for this one project to come in. Like, I don't have, 5 other projects going on at any given moment that I'm like, there's so much, like, there's a specific project I've been working for a long time, and like, I'll get a message from the guy saying that it's ready to go, and if I don't respond within a few hours, he'll start posting, like, on my comments on Facebook, like, hey, you got a message from me. Hey, you got a message from me. Like, just on,
Stalking you.
like I don't have, like, I'm
You need to
my
end
entire
that
career.
relationship.
Yeah, my entire career is just waiting for you to finish drawing something. So that's all I'm doing. I don't have other projects. You were my only source of income. So yeah, there's a lot of that, and yeah, I mean, kind of toxic kind of behavior from other people that just gets pushed onto us, I guess.
One of the things that's interesting to me about lettering as a craft, and I don't mean to say that, letterers were the last freelancers, the last to become freelancers, right? Would that be appropriate? Or at least the last to get their names in the books. That's another factor.
Well, it depended on the company.
Yeah, 'cause
Marvel,
actually,
Marvel had Sam Rosen and Artie Simek in there years before DC did. When I started at DC, Joe Letterise, who was lettering a lot of stuff for them, kept leaning on them to get his name in there. He'd even sneak it in sometimes, and they'd take it back out. But they finally relinquished and started giving letter credits.
I mean, letters are still there. Not every book puts the letterer on the cover.
Mm-hmm.
I know, Taylor, you fought for that with some companies.
Actually, I didn't mind so much about the cover. I wanted more money, to be honest. You can keep my name off the cover. Just give me more money. But I do fight for us to get shouted out whenever the book is being talked about. That's my big thing. Like, if you say this was done by so and so and so and so and so and so, and then don't mention us, it's like, well, we don't matter.
How'd you read it? Yeah.
How did you read it? You don't think very highly of us, which is why we started this day in the first place. I remember having conversations with Nate, and I forget who else was in it. Maybe Todd was in the conversation.
I think Todd had something to do with it.
Yeah, we were talking between the three of us for a while about it. So,
I mean, there's been times where I've been asked to put, like, the cover dress and everything, and they tell me the list of names to put on it, and they don't include my name. Like, so I'm the one putting the names on the cover, and they do not include me in that. So, I don't know, like, yeah.
I've been very fortunate since working for John and Sandy King Carpenter that every book that I've worked on, my name has been on the cover. In fact, there's quite a few graphic novels where we have the artist, writer, and just me lettering. So we had 2 people actually put out graphic. It's possible.
No, there's plenty of that.
Yeah.
I want to since we brought up his name, let's and he's not here to defend himself. So let's talk about Todd.
well, now I feel terrible about myself.
Don't worry about it. No, we don't have. So Darren posted this earlier today, in honor of the day, and the concept. This is something that I kind of wanted to talk about. When you decide how a person speaks, or if you're told how a person speaks, how does that work for you? I mean, like in this particular example of Sandman, Sandman, like the concept of Sandman's, word balloons being reverse black and white, like was a masterpiece, a masterstroke of the design of that book, right? I don't think people would disagree with that much, but like even I'm not sure who he's talking to here, but like the concept of being able to design a word balloon for a particular person or a typical style for that character. How does how do you approach that? Like, how does that make a difference to you guys? And I can say that also because I want to. We can bring hang on, I got there. So in this, which now we've got Janice in the way that I went too far back. Hang on, let me go forward here. So the way that you have the word balloon here, and the way that there's something very, and this is not 100% typical of all of your word balloons and your fonts, but there's something very um, imperial about the way that you use Doom's words. Is that intentional?
Yeah, I mean, this guy's like a big threat.
Right. So like,
I
and
know
that
the
and that
character.
and that and that's what that's kind of what I'm getting at. Like when you decide that this particular character's words need to have character that match that. How do you guys address that?
Well, I remember when I designed the Ghost Rider balloon, the flaming balloon. It was
Hmm.
like
Sure. Perfect.
it was a time where everyone was trying to like up the quality of speaking balloons, the fonts, yeah, fonts and the balloon designs itself. I remember getting the Ghost Rider series and it's like, why are these people talking to this guy with his skull on fire? I'd run the other way. So what's the matter with them? So I remember thinking, well, what could be special? I was like, duh, a flaming balloon, so that you would know who you're speaking before you actually read it. So um, you know, fans who are in the press have sent me these things I've done. I have no memory of, but when you read the script and you see the art, you feel the cadence, you feel the character, the emotional life of the character, and that's how we would. That's how I would use different fonts. It's like Saint Sinner. Um, I, I probably went overboard, but every letter was a different style. I had like 5 pens in my hand, hand lettering, keep changing it. I probably gave Christy Shield a headache because I had like open lettering. She had the color. So so this guy went through reality and his reality. So I want to show that imbalance. When he went into his own world. So yeah, the story tells you what to do, and when you look at the art, you find that balance. The other aspect is you don't want to overwhelm it by lettering only.
Justin, I want you to chime in here because just thinking about that Rich Dueck trilogy. There's so many different things there, and you did a great job in terms of, you know, how do you approach it? Like where you have a character that you like, I need to do something different for this character.
I wish I could sit here and tell you that I put a lot of thought into it,
Okay,
but sadly I don't.
it just
Actually,
that's good.
um, if there's a lot of times, and this is the good thing, and I'll use Rich as an example. You'll get collaborators who will, if I question something, if I have a question about how I think someone would sound, you sort of bounce that idea off of them, and you wait for their feedback and just bounce ideas off of each other. And I think that has a lot to do with it as well.
Do you find that is an open channel from for the majority of your work? That you have an open channel to ask those questions.
Yes.
Good. How about you, Taylor?
So it's funny because I was just thinking about this, and I think about how I teach my class. And when we first start working, like they're all excited about making their own balloons, and I stress to them like, listen, everyone remembers the movie The Incredibles, right?
Sure.
Remember that line about once everyone has superpowers, no one's special or whatever? Once everyone's special, no one's special.
Right.
So I'm like, all right, if you give everybody their own balloon, these balloons don't mean anything anymore. And it's just chaos. Forget Sandman a second. You're not Todd Klein. I say that to them like, not to insult you. You're not Todd. You're not ready to do this. Learn the basics and then we'll move into it. But I do apply that to my work because I did find, when I was working on Grim Fairy Tale, I'm still working on it, but when I was starting to work on it, every issue I get asked, well, this guy needs a special. This guy needs a special. And it just became a big mess. And I'm like, this is too much. Like, we're drowning them in chaos and they can't read this. So I've really started embracing a more simplistic style and then emphasizing with like one or two characters who really need it when it comes in, So that's part of my process. And then the other thing is like, how often is this going to come up? Because again, if we see it all the time, even if it's just the one character, it kind of loses something. Like when you read, like for sake of argument, the Infinity War, and really the only character thing in that book who had like something special might have been Thanos and maybe Adam Warlock. It makes them stand out as the leads of the book. But if you start doing that, we're like, okay, now Iron Man has his own balloon, and Giant Man is really gigantic, so he should have his own balloon. It just starts going overboard. So that's my thought on it.
A perfect example of that is, and when I developed this question, the character I was thinking about was Deadpool, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Deadpool has a very specific balloon, and he's pretty much the only one who has it in his book. So that he's speaking, and he's yellow, and it's weird, and it's always there. But like one of the things, and I don't know if we have enough like to talk about this, but like anybody who comes on Deadpool's book has to use that balloon, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like that's a thing. Like how does that work? How does that work in terms of transferring where you're coming onto somebody else's an existing character's book where that existing character has a special balloon?
Geez, I've done a few things. I won't go into detail here either, but
we're all for details. Whenever you want to talk, it's fine. Like this is everybody wants to hear what you have to say. So go ahead.
I've actually ignored some precedents that had been made because I thought they were, at worst, unnecessary affectations. They're like what you were saying, Taylor. If everybody talks in a different way, then it kind of, there's nothing special about anyone.
Mm-hmm.
I remember working on something back in '76 for DC. One guy spoke in Old English. Somebody else, every character practically of the main characters had his own balloon, his own type of letter. And it was set in Las Vegas, so I had to do all the doggone signs and things. Worst few days of my life, I think, doing that book. But there's a book I'm working on right now. It's hard science fiction. And I've been thinking for decades about, and even Mark Evanier was talking about this on his site recently. Gold Key, they started out in the 1960s. Somebody there in power decided to do almost boxy balloons with a round corner, and they shoved them up. No, they had them free floating, so there was some space between the top of the balloon and the top of the panel. All it did was give less space to the art. Mm-hmm. And I thought they had an interesting idea. They wanted to give it a more modern and sophisticated look, but they fouled it up. And so I'm doing that on this new book. I'm taking this Gold Key thing. I'm also doing some interesting lettering. Mhm. That I think has a uniqueness to it, and a kind. It goes with the artwork. The artwork is gorgeous, very science fiction, as I said. But a lot of this stuff, Swamp Thing really worked. Those few words that he would growl out, had the big, thick borders around them, and the narrative balloons when he was thinking or talking, telling you what was going on. They were really neat too. I liked that. But if you do it with everybody, it just doesn't work. It becomes too much.
Yeah. So let's see then. What's the next thing we want to talk about? When you look at other people's work, and this is part of the difficulty of being in this industry. When you look at other people's work, what is your typical reaction? Are you hypercritical? Do you edit other people's work? And so if you don't want to talk about that part of it, like what is the thing that bothers you when you see other people work? That's one of the options. Or who are your favorites that you like, who are still working today that are not here tonight? Well, you can say if they're here tonight. Everybody's favorite's John and Janice. Don't worry about it.
Obviously. If I'll just jump in. So
Go ahead.
I'm in this unique position where I also teach this. So I get questions, all the time, like, what do you think of this? What do you think of that? Can I do this? Can I do that? And I need to be a little diplomatic because there's some things that some people do that I don't necessarily agree with, I'm going to say it like, this is why it works. This is why I don't think it works. As long as you can justify it, try it, right? Like that kind of thing. But I've definitely embraced a very clean style that my first goal, my primary goal is always, can you read it? Can you follow it? Everything else is secondary to that.
If I can't read it and I can't follow it, I'm putting it down.
That's exactly
and I've done
it.
that. And there's way too much stuff that gets published that I have to do that too.
And like, so that's my focus. I'm like, let's start here, and then when we can find flourishes, we do it. So like that's really how I handle that kind of stuff. Sometimes I'll be shown something. Again, not to say anything negative about anybody, but some stuff that just really doesn't work. I'm like, okay, listen, this is why it's not working. I don't recommend trying it because it's really not going to help whatever you're trying to do. Again, remember, this is all coming from me talking to students who are asking, how can I do this? Why should I do this? Whatever. Other than that, I really don't like poo-pooing anybody's work because everyone has their style choices, So that's my answer on that. And then as far as favorites, so I'm going to put this in a way where I'm going to say the word stealing, but it's really just taking inspiration. I take bits from everybody that I like. John does stuff I love, and I try to incorporate it when I can. Tom Orzechowski, I love a lot of the stuff he does, especially with the wordy stuff. We've all seen the miracles he's pulled with Chris's work, and
Sure.
I love that stuff. But then there's more modern guys. Like when I started, I was in the DC lettering department. We all learned from Nick Napolitano in The Office. So we all kind of had a little bit of his style. And that really goes back to the Kubert School. So like everyone that kind of came out of the Kubert School also had a similar style. And it was just a thing. Which if you look at the guys who I worked with there or who came before me, you can see a little similarities in the way we work. But I love Gaspar stuff. Actually, quick side note, a couple of years ago, they had a big Batman exhibit at the Society of Illustrators in New York, and they had a lot of his Batman lettering, and I was like, this is beautiful. I just stood there looking at it. I just couldn't. They're so thin and so slight, and they just work. It's like, this is incredible. I wish I could do this.
One of the things that I'm going to share a story, and it involves Janice, and I hope she doesn't get upset about it. But there's a one of the things about lettering that and letterers is that I feel that, and I'm so glad we're doing this. I'm so glad you're here, and we're going to share the shit out of this so everybody gets to hear the kinds of things that you guys have to go through, and the love you have for the comics, and that's one of the things that everyone who's in comics is there because they love it. You know, it's just an amazing thing. But I was on attending a panel that Janice was on, and there was a very well known artist who you would all know if I said his name, and I'm not going to say his name. She's laughing because she knows what it is. And the only thing that person had to say, besides the fact that he was derailing the panel, was he wanted to know if Tom Orzechowski was a good letterer, because that's the only letterer name that he knew. And so he asked Janice, like, is he considered to be good in your field? And this was only like 5 years ago. So it's kind of the point of that is that there is this lack of understanding or appreciation, especially I think throughout the industry of how important letterers are and who's good and who's not. And obviously Tom is amazing, you know, but Janice is amazing as well, and like had probably lettered him and probably he had no idea. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Oh no, I thought it was the one I told the artist.
Well, you told him to shut up. It was the same thing.
Oh yeah, yeah.
It was the same panel.
Yeah,
like
he was. Shut up or I walk out of the room because
yes,
he was like dominating.
It was that panel exactly. Yeah. He was completely absorbing and taking the panel in a way.
When I said it, the audience gasped.
And so Janice told him that if you don't shut up, I'm leaving, and he shut up. But the only thing he had to say then to her was like, "Is Tom Orzechowski a good writer, a good letterer?" And she had no idea. So.
Yeah, I'm good too. Next question.
Justin, what do you, when you look at other people, do you enjoy looking at lettering for other people? Is it something that you open a book and you're like, I'm gonna ignore it, or I'm gonna look at it, or how do you approach that being in the field?
You sort of kind of have to turn off that part of your brain, almost like if you're sitting down for the sole purpose of reading and enjoying a comic. I find myself turning off that part of it just so I can read it, but then maybe it slips back in there, so you're like, wait, what is that right there? And then you focus in on it and you look at it and you try to figure out how it was done, and you just make mental notes of stuff like that. I know I personally I don't like my own sound effects, so that's something I specifically look at whenever I'm reading a comic, is to see how or what someone else did, and just sort of see if I can break it down and figure out how it was done, sort of as a learning process.
I kind of want to share this other story that it's one of my favorite John stories. But John, you've had experiences where you've found that there's somebody who lettered something and you thought that was pretty good, and it turned out it was you.
I've never really liked my own lettering.
Except when you're lettering a Mike Mignola Batman story.
Yeah. I had lettered this thing. It was only an 8-page story, and I always liked Mike's stuff. He's a master of shape. He and Alex Toth, I think, that they don't need details or anything, just the shape. And I don't know how he does it, but it's wonderful. And Kevin Nolan, I think he was supposed to ink it.
He inked it. He ended up inking it.
Yep. I love his stuff. He sent me a sample of his own lettering when I was at Heavy Metal. I put it up on the wall. It was so good. Never did make use of it, unfortunately, but it was beautiful stuff. So I thought this guy will go a long way. But I lettered this little 8-page Batman story and forgot about it. And years went by. And one day I got a package from DC, and it was secret Batman secret files. And I opened it up, and I was going through it, and I stopped because of Kevin Nolan and on the artwork on this, and I thought, wow, this is really neat. But Hellboy, why has he come back to Batman? And I'm not realizing it was years old. And then I started looking at the lettering, and I thought, geez, this is good. I could learn from this guy. Who is it? I turned back to the first page, and it was me. And I had totally forgotten the doggone thing, and it was a shock because I don't usually like what I've done. I always think I could have done it better, but also people change. What I did in the 70s or 80s, it's totally different than what I'm capable of doing now. I looked onto things. Mobius had a huge effect on me. And Basil Wolverton, I always called him Mr. Wolverton, so I don't know how to correctly pronounce his first name. But he told me one time, I used to go and see him when I was going to Clark College in 1969, just drive over and say hello to him. We'd talk about comics. But he told me I'd eventually get to the point where I wouldn't need guidelines. And I've never, except for some Mobius stuff that I tried to kind of redo. I was really bouncing all over the place. But other than that, I've always had to have guidelines. Sometimes I kind of half ignore them. That's going back to what I picked up.
But you still put them there.
Yeah, they're all still there. Even the stuff I do on the computer. I have these gray guidelines that I can letter on, and then I can obliterate the guidelines when I put them on the final scans.
Does anybody want to hear the rest of that Batman story? Because it's a good one. Because I've got the other half from Kevin Nolan. So what happened was that it was a Clayface story that that Mignola had penciled. He hadn't inked it. John lettered it, and Denny was the editor of Batman at the time and hated it. Hated it, canceled, killed it. They never published it. They never inked it. Kevin was supposed to ink it and never got around to it. And eventually, somebody had sent those pages out to some inker in Canada to try and, practice on. And then when they were doing this Batman Secret Files, it was a villain Secret Files, and Bob Schreck was the editor. He's like, look, everybody had seen the pages, the pencils in the studio. Everybody knew about the Mignola Batman story, and they're like, well, let's see if we can get that. Let's see if we can do that. And then they found out that they were somewhere else. The inker in Canada had never touched the pages, didn't actually do anything with them, so they got them back. And then they got them back. Mike talked to Kevin and said, listen, I know you were supposed to ink these pages, but I kind of think I want to. And so Kevin Nolan's like, yeah, fine, go ahead. And Mike got the pages and he looked at him. He's like, I don't even know who this guy is. You ink him. I can't even. That is too long ago. So eventually it ended up in that book, and that is the story of the lost Batman Mignola story. And it ended up in John's door, and he said, Who lettered this?
I will make a quick aside.
There's
Go ahead.
I've never looked at anything I've worked on after I send the files to print. Never. I cannot bring myself to do it. Because as Janice said before, you're going to find every mistake, every what if I did this, what if I did that.
But you don't even look. You never look at the prints at the.
No, I can't do it. I will be too critical of myself. I have to just move forward.
So I've talked to Chris Sotomayor about this and stuff like that. He doesn't look at it for critical, but he's nervous of how it shows up in print, and if he's bothered by it. A lot of times that'll happen, especially if something has taken a while and the paper that they use shows up differently because of the way you thought it was going to show up.
Mm-hmm.
Does that, you guys feel you don't do that even? You don't care. It's not you did.
Something happened with me. The last stuff I was doing for DC or Marvel or whoever, right on the artwork, I used a Castell Zero.
Mm-hmm.
And it worked fine on the stuff that was printed on the pulp paper, with letterpress. but when some of it anyway was reprinted later on, offset on better quality paper, it looked wimpy. It was very thin compared to what I had done and what was printed in the original printing of it, and that bothered the heck out of me. I can't think of any specific ones right now, but wait a minute, there was Walt Simonson wrote a Wonder Woman series, I guess it was a series of books, and I think Jerry Ordway drew them, but I lettered them, and I cannot look at the lettering that I did that's printed in the compilation version of it on the better quality paper and by offset printing.
Hmm.
But the original stuff on the pulp, it looked fine.
What is it that that gets, after being in this industry, after doing comic books, what is it that makes you say, I still want to do that? I mean, again, it's the love, but like talk about that. Like Justin, well, obviously getting paid, but Justin, you said, hey, I want to this is what I want to do. You're gonna keep it doing what keeps you going. Listen, there's no money in comics. Everybody knows there's no money in comics.
So for me, what keeps me going is this is, I shouldn't say this is the first work that I've ever done where it's felt like a career. Like this feels like this is what I'm supposed to be doing. So that keeps me going, and I've made a lot of really good friends, and getting the chance to meet up with them at conventions, or just texting them, or hanging out on Zoom on an afternoon. That's what keeps me going.
So, sense of community
Yes.
is an important part of this of the industry.
It is for me. Yes.
Micah, like we didn't get to do your origin story, but like what made you be a letterer and keeps you doing it?
Well, I had, since high school, I had a bunch of different careers, or not careers, jobs, trying to figure out what I was going to do. We had kids. I got married at 19 and had kids, 2 kids within a couple years of that. So I had to make money to provide for everybody. My wife was in nursing school for I don't know, like 8 years, so I was the only one working during that time. The last job I had was working at a group home overnight, and I was going
I did that.
Going to community college during the day for graphic design, and I was going to try and make that a career. And I was also just I didn't grow up reading comics like every week or anything. I got into it at like 2006, just looking for a hobby, just something to do for since I was working and taking care of family and everything. I just wanted something fun to do. And then I got interested in making them, and could realize I tried writing a few things and none of it was good, and I never really drew, so I wasn't good at that. But as I was learning graphic design and stuff, it was a lot of it applied to the lettering stuff. I mean, as everybody here would probably know, that there's a lot of graphic design kind of crossover, and I started playing around with it, practicing it. I got the Comic Craft book and the DC guide to coloring and lettering. It has like 20 pages about lettering in the back, and started practicing it. Got a couple of jobs. The group home called me one day and told me that I didn't have a job anymore, and so it was around the same time my wife was finished nursing school. So I decided, asked her, since she spent so much time going to school and being the only one working, if it could go the other way and I could just try and make lettering a thing. And it worked. I got one job after another, and it became a career. And I haven't had to go back and do anything else since. I used to do delivery driving and all kinds of stuff, construction. So I haven't had to do any of that. I've just been able to letter, It's fun. It's easy. I get to work from home, and I don't have some boss over my shoulder. Physically. I mean, there's editors and people emailing you, but no.
Yeah.
I like being at home. Yeah, I like being at home and just kind of I get out of bed, I go to my desk and work, and when I'm done, I can go lay back down. I guess I mean, it's easy. Like Justin said, you meet a lot of cool people. I mean, I have friends all over the world. From working with them, go to shows, go to conventions, and meet people. I mean, it's fun. I mean, it's a fun career, and I'm glad I get to do it because I know a lot of people that get into comics also have to keep a side job, and the fact that I've been able just to keep getting jobs and stay working is great. I mean, really fun.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I appreciate it. I want to, he's not here tonight, but I want people to know who are watching that if you're looking to find out about what a letterer does and the technical aspects of it, this is a fantastic book. Nate Picos wrote it. Taylor, I think you helped him a little bit with some of his. You read it.
Well, he asked me to read it before it was even announced.
Mhm.
Partially just because another letterer he trusted, and partially because of my position at the Hubert School. He wanted to see how it would read in like an academic type setting. So yeah, I got to read it early. I loved it. It was like, and I did help him with a couple things like, you could do this and it'll be easier, that kind of stuff. But it's all Nate, and
Yeah.
he told me that it was years in the work, and it was like it shows like it's fantastic.
It's a great thing. I recommend it, even if you're not, even to not understand, to not care about doing it, but to understand the amount of work that goes into it. Just understanding the words, the terminology is so important. And there's a lot, if you are interested in lettering, it is a great place. It is a how-to guide, how to get started. But there's something about lettering, and this lady, I don't know, Janice Chiang, told me something earlier today about how letterers, if you're a good letterer, you're an artist. It is an artistic endeavor. And while that book is great to give you the mechanical pieces of how to do it, there's something that comes from the heart. There's something, and you've all said this over the course of the evening, how there you love the doing of it, the you want to make it look good. You want to take the words that are on this script and put it onto this piece of art so that it becomes part of it, and I think that's fantastic. I think that's the heart of the letter.
I with all art processes that it's a creative challenge of problem solving. Sometimes
Mhm.
it does feel like solitaire, where you're moving pieces and coming back in to refine like placement or the pointers. But it's that excitement, like, yeah, I can figure this out. And I always explain to people what we actually do as a letterer. We're describing a 3D world in a 2D dimension. So that's reflective of, the cadence in terms of our font choices, the placement of sound effects, the angles, the size impact. But, it's like successful lettering, I feel, is like allows the reader to see the art and, first time they read it and to come back a second time, they could focus on the art by itself, the visual storytelling, and then they can come back out and read the written story. So out, it's like juggling. Whenever I'm sure all the letters here, that's what you're thinking, whether consciously or not. You're like pushing and pulling until you get to the end, and then we have to go back again, right, Taylor? Because I don't look at my printer book. It's like a slap in my face. It's like, what? How did I let that go? Well, maybe like with Micah, they call you overnight and you got to deliver in 2 days or less. I hate it's like when editors shove things under your door. Fridays are running out. It's like,
Yeah.
could you gotten to me earlier?
Well, I mean, some of the best stuff ever happened that way. Did you ever know that The Metalman was written and created in a weekend? There were pages that needed to be filled, and Koeniger went home on the weekend, and by the Monday there was a whole script and all the characters were created.
Wow.
But that's the industry, right? I want to. We've been doing this a while. I appreciate you guys being here. I think we're all
Okay.
kind of dragging a little bit, but I want to thank you all for being here and give you an opportunity, to just say one last thing for everybody. We'll go around the room. So Taylor, you want to say something? Anything?
Not much to say. I'll say for me personally, this is a very satisfying career. Like for someone who didn't know what he wanted to do, and kind of fell into it. It's wonderful. Um, as much as a challenge and it's exhausting, I think we can all agree with that part. It is a lot of fun. Like everyone said, it's a puzzle. Like I think my off time, the little bit I have, I do jigsaw puzzles. So it's really just an extension of work at that point.
Right.
Um, but it scratches an itch. I was talking about it. Someone's like, how do you do this? How do you do this freelance life? How do you do this job over and over again? I'm like, the thing about it is that there's a definitive beginning, middle, and end to every job I'm doing. And I'm not saying anything bad about like, your standard, jobs and careers, but like, it's not like when you work in an office, like, oh, I just got to constantly be doing this paperwork. We got to constantly do this. Like, I get a story. I envision my style for it. I work it through. I finish it. I send it off, and it's done. And that just gives me the sense of like completion and satisfaction. And then it doesn't hurt that like we're all artists. We like when people look at our work and enjoy it. Like validation is important, and I get validation every time someone picks up a book and says, "Hey, I love this thing," whatever. So it's the best possible job for someone like me.
Good.
And then the only other thing I do want to say real quick is if you want to learn more, besides the regular Cubert School classes, I also teach online classes. If you'd like to learn from someone who's a little crazy, but
Awesome. Micah, you have any final thoughts?
Thanks. Everything we said before. It's an honor to be here talking with, I talked with Taylor before and Justin, an honor to John and Janice, both of you are very big fan of both of you. I was just reading Mother Panic that DC put out that John lettered. It's amazing stuff. And it was a few years back, there was a book called Brindle, Kentucky that John, you lettered that I really liked.
If Tommy Lee's drawing it, John's lettering.
Yeah. And both of those. But yeah, like Taylor said, and everyone has said, it's a great career that we get to be a part of. I'm very critical of myself in everything, but especially in this. And I'm glad that, when we go to shows and stuff, people can tell us that they like our work and everything. And it makes me feel good that I'm actually doing something, because like I said, I've done a bunch of different things and I've kind of half-assed through all of them. So to actually be able to say that I'm good at something that I do, and that to hear from other people that I actually am doing good is great. But yeah, just like I said, it's an honor. Thanks for having us and being able to talk about lettering a little bit.
Thanks, Micah. How about you, Justin?
First off, thanks for doing this and sort of bringing an awareness to the masses about what we do. I think comics is one of the greatest mediums ever. I love it. I love reading it. I love collecting it. I love making it. Thank you.
No, thank you. Thank you for doing this. We're gonna get to John, and I'm gonna embarrass him because John is one of my favorite people in the world. Besides, if you guys didn't know that, but Mike Gold sent me a message because he knew you were possibly going to be on. He said, if you're on, that I should share this, and I'm sure you're going to love it. So, so this is, and I don't know if you can see this. So let's see, let's scoop this up a little bit. So this is, this was what Betty Page Being Bad by John Workman. Scroll this up. There you go. See, by John Workman. And so So Taylor, don't feel bad. John's been there when you're working on Xenoscope.
That was a biographical thing too.
Yeah.
My encountering Betty Page by way of her photos and all of when I was 13 years old or something like that. And sticking with her all those years.
Thank you for being here.
Oh,
And you're going to be in Baltimore next weekend. So if anyone is going to be in Baltimore Comic-Con,
oh yeah.
John's going to be there. Mike, are you coming? Justin, you're going to try?
I'm gonna be at SPX for the actual show.
Oh, okay, sure.
But I'm gonna come up for the Ringos because I'm nominated. Obviously, I'm gonna be there for that.
All right. Well, I'll see you then. How about you, Justin?
Yeah.
You coming?
Yeah, I'll be there.
Okay, great. And Janice, thank you so much for being here. I want you to. I want to end with you. I want you to. You always have such. You always have such a way of inspiring me, and people around you in the words that you have for the things that you do. So, what's your final words tonight?
What I love about what I do is the collaboration process. And what I've learned to really appreciate since going out to conventions is that the power of storytelling and how, when we reach our readers and fans, they embrace the characters that they recognize themselves in. And, what's really cool is when, you see a character on a series that you work on, people cosplaying, the love is that deep. And when you speak to them, it's like I was hunt down some ghostwriter. So they would say to me, well, during that time in my life, I was like really struggling. And then I found a ghostwriter and learned through how he was handling the situation that I found my way. So everything's about, blind faith, hopefulness. And I think that's what our industry offers as a community. So, it's like I see a lot of polarization in this country. And during my spotlight panel, it's on YouTube, I can see people doing. What I said is like, the good, relationships we have together in conventions and on panels, when people show up, we have to bring back to our everyday lives. To whoever we interface, we have to see people as people. And maybe we'll have a fighting chance. Because, pre-pandemic, obviously I'm Chinese, I'm a minority. They don't know what I do, but I look like a middle-aged woman, and it's like all bets are off. Every time I leave my house, it's like, I gotta get ready. Is it gonna be an argument? Do I have to stand my ground, or are they gonna threaten me? I mean, it's like, but growing up in New York, I learned very early on how to have that eye in back of the head and the antennas up. So, yeah, the only way this country is going to grow and not shrink is like we have to let new people in. And part of it is in our storytelling, the variety of characters, people from different backgrounds, and the stories they tell. So I was talking to Larry Hama before I went to San Diego, and I asked him, "Do you want to be my moderator?" He said, "Well, if I'm not sure what day I'm going to be there, but Hasbro is going to bring me to the convention because I've written 300 issues of G.I. Joe." Like, yeah, right on. So, but we were just talking about how the industry has developed, right? And he said, "Guess what? I'm doing this graphic novel for like this book company about a Japanese mythological creature." He said, "I know that inside, oh, the Fox Princess or something." He said, "I know that inside out." I said, "Yeah, we've had enough practice. It's one of our Ringo Award nominees is Tokyo Rose, 0 Hour, written by Andre Coutinho and Kate Hazen. I wrote the foreword to it also. So, it's like I said, like, yeah, we had so much practice. We could actually tell stories. I could letter
Right.
stories about our own history. And I got to work with Greg Pak on a story about Asian American history, who belongs for the New York public education system. So it'll be distributed, for I guess like young readers to high school. So that's a real progress, written, unwritten chapters of American history that have been like swept under the carpet. So I'm really lucky, and I'm so happy to meet everyone. So I want to meet you in person eventually. I know Taylor, I haven't met Justin or John, I think we might have met in passing, but in Micah. So, Bob, I love you. Thank you for having me.
Love you too. Thank you so much for everybody for being here. I want to thank everybody again. It's been a pleasure. And I look forward, like, this is going to be an annual thing. So, if you're available on Gasper, it's going to be Sunday next year because there's a leap year. So anyway, maybe deadlines will be done by then. So we'll have a good showing. All right. Thanks everybody for being here. Thanks for watching. And remember, it's never too late to love a letterer.
This has been a production of the Pop Culture Squad Network. PopCultureSquad.com. How do you nerd?